The galaxy had always whispered about Earth. Among the starfaring empires, the crystalline Serath, the reptilian Krathar, the vast conglomerate of the Volari, there were tales traded in the shadows of council halls. Humanity had risen late to the stars, stumbling into the interstellar stage centuries after the elder races had carved out their dominions. And yet, in scarcely 100 years, Earth's armies had forged a reputation of brutality, innovation, and sheer, unbreakable will. The galaxy remembered Mars. They remembered the siege of Titan. They remembered the way human ships fought long after they should have gone silent, bleeding fire into the void, turning battlefields into graveyards where even victors trembled at the cost. The aliens already feared Earth's armies. But there was something else, something darker, lurking beyond rumor. Fleets that departed and never returned. Human task forces that dissolved into silence, not destroyed, not defeated, but vanished. Some said it was a secret weapon. Others claimed Earth had discovered a new realm of space, hidden corridors beyond known hyperspace lanes. Most dismissed it as myth. Until the Council received proof. Commander Elias Ward stood on the observation deck of the USC Resolute, a warship built like a blade of steel in fury. From the glass wall before him stretched the black canvas of deep space, scattered with stars that shimmered like cold fires. His reflection stared back at him, a weathered man in his 40s, gray just starting to touch the edges of his hair, his dark eyes carrying the weight of battles too numerous to count. Beside him stood Colonel Sarah Holt, sharp-eyed, restless, her hands clasped behind her back. She was younger, mid-30s, her voice carrying that crisp authority that made crews snap to attention before she even spoke. "They're watching us," she said quietly. Elias didn't need to ask who. Beyond the edges of their sensors, beyond the veil of visible light, he could feel the eyes of alien observers, the Council's reconnaissance ships, cloaked and trembling. Earth had agreed to this demonstration, though nobody on the Resolute trusted the motives. "They want to see if the rumors are true," Elias murmured. Sarah's jaw tightened. "And if they are?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The truth hung heavy between them. If the Council learned what humanity was truly doing with its vanishing fleets, the galaxy would never sleep again. The order came at 0400 ship time. Elias gathered his command crew in the war room, its walls lined with holographic star charts, a faint hum of processors filling the silence. "Operation Phantom Step," Elias said, his voice steady. "We've been cleared for demonstration. Our observers will follow as far as their technology allows. After that, they're blind." The officers exchanged wary glances. Lieutenant Marcus Kane, the youngest of them, his face still carrying the naivety of someone who hadn't yet been burned by war, finally spoke. "Sir, do we really trust letting them this close? The Volari don't exactly honor treaties." "They won't see what matters," Sarah cut in, her tone flat, cutting off further protest. Elias looked over his crew, seasoned men and women who had lived their lives in steel corridors and firelit skies. He saw no fear, only readiness. "Then let's show them," he said. The Resolute moved like a predator through the void, its engines flaring a cold blue as it slid into the designated sector. Alien ships followed at a distance, long, needle-like Serath craft, the jagged bulk of Krathar dreadnoughts, the sleek Volari cruisers whose hulls shimmered like oil. They thought themselves unseen. But Earth's sensors painted them in perfect clarity. "Observers holding position," Sarah reported, eyes scanning the tactical feed. Elias nodded. "Then we proceed." The crew worked with mechanical precision. Coordinates locked. Systems primed. Energy spiked across the hull, a vibration running through the deck plating. "Initiate Phantom Step," Elias ordered. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the universe tore. Outside, the stars bent. A ripple spread through the void, like the surface of water struck by an unseen hand. Space itself seemed to twist, folding inward, consuming light. And then, the Resolute was gone. Vanished. Not destroyed. Not translated into hyperspace as other ships did. One moment it was there, the next it was erased from the map of reality. The alien observers panicked. Their instruments screamed with null readings, their captains shouted in confusion. the Serath ship launched scanning drones that found nothing but echoes. The Volari cruiser surged forward, desperate to trace the vanishing signature. The Krathar dreadnought activated weapons, its crew fearing sorcery. But there was nothing to find. The Resolute had stepped where no one else could follow. Within the ship, silence pressed against the hull. Elias stood at the center of the command deck, watching as the starfield outside warped into something wrong. The crew whispered in awe and fear. The stars were gone. In their place stretched a black expanse, not empty but filled with shifting shadows, faint glimmers of light that moved like predators circling prey. The air inside the ship grew colder, the lights dimming as though reality itself thinned. "Welcome to the Phantom Lane," Elias said, his voice low. Sarah swallowed, her hands tightening on the railing. "Every time I see it, feels like we weren't meant to be here." "We weren't," Elias admitted. "But we are. And that's what makes us dangerous." Back in normal space, the alien observers transmitted frantic reports to their governments. Their messages were filled with disbelief, their words half-choked with fear. The humans hadn't just vanished into hyperspace. No known drive could mask a ship so completely. No known technology could erase signatures so utterly. Rumors ignited like wildfire. Had Earth discovered new physics? A hidden dimension? A weaponized void? The council convened an emergency session, voices raised, fear heavy in every syllable. If Earth could move fleets like this, entire armadas could appear anywhere, bypassing defenses, striking with no warning. The fear of Earth's armies had been great. But now, that fear turned to terror. On the bridge of the Resolute, Elias turned to Sarah, his voice barely above a whisper. "They've seen the first step. But they don't know the truth." Sarah met his eyes. "That this place isn't empty." A flicker passed outside the window, something vast, moving in the darkness. The crew froze, breaths catching. The shadows were watching. And they were not human. The bridge was silent, save for the faint hum of the ship's systems. The black expanse outside was not like space. Space was cold, yes, but familiar, stars burning in predictable patterns, planets drifting with silent dignity. Here, in the Phantom Lane, there were no stars. No constants. Only a shifting sea of shadows and glimmers that darted like living things. The kind of place where even silence felt alive, waiting. Commander Elias Ward stood motionless, eyes locked on the view. The flicker they had seen, a shape in the dark, still lingered in the crew's minds. "Confirm sensor feed," Elias said quietly. Lieutenant Marcus Kane swallowed hard, his fingers trembling over the console. The young officer's face glistened with sweat despite the chill in the air. "Sir, I'm trying," Marcus said, his voice strained. "But the system, it can't define what it's seeing. It's like the shadows don't exist in stable coordinates." "They exist," Elias said, his voice grave. "We just weren't meant to measure them." Colonel Sarah Holt leaned closer to the command chair. "They're watching. You know that, don't you?" Elias's expression didn't waver. "They always watch." In the dim-lit war room, hours later, the senior officers gathered. The air was heavy, thick with the tension of men and women who had walked too close to the edge of something unnatural. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" Sarah asked, her tone sharp enough to cut steel. "Always," Elias said. She planted her hands on the table, leaning forward. "We can't keep bringing crews here without answers. This, whatever this place is, wasn't built for us. And if those things decide we're trespassing, we don't have a defense." Elias studied her. She wasn't wrong. The Phantom Lane had been discovered by accident, an experimental slip drive malfunction during the Europa skirmishes. The USC Pathfinder had vanished for 17 days. When it returned, its hull was scarred with markings no weapon had made, and half its crew was missing. But the survivors spoke of power. Of shortcuts through the fabric of space. Of voices in the dark whispering secrets no human mind should understand. Earth had listened. Earth had weaponized it. And fleets had vanished ever since. Lieutenant Marcus shifted uneasily. "Sir, What if the Council's observers aren't the only ones who noticed us step in? What if those things out there? They noticed, Elias interrupted, his voice cutting like a blade. They always notice. Sarah's gaze hardened. And what are they, Elias? You've been here more times than anyone. You've seen more. What are we dealing with? The commander's eyes lowered. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly. Shadows that remember. The room chilled with the weight of the words. They aren't alive, not the way we are. They're remnants. Echoes of something older than stars. Every time we enter this place, they watch. Sometimes, they follow. The silence was broken by the soft chime of the comms system. Bridge to Commander Ward. You need to see this. The officers returned to the command deck. The shadows outside the viewports had thickened. Shapes shifted in the dark, moving with intent. One in particular loomed vast, impossibly vast, its outline flickering like a mirage. It had no fixed form, yet the human mind forced one upon it, wings that stretched forever, eyes like burning voids, a body that shimmered between substance and smoke. Marcus's voice shook. It's bigger than a dreadnought. Maybe bigger than a fleet. The shape moved closer. The ship's lights flickered as though something drained power not from their systems, but from reality itself. Sarah gritted her teeth. Weapons ready. No. Elias barked. The word echoed sharp, startling the crew into stillness. He rose slowly from his chair, his gaze locked on the shifting Leviathan. His tone softened, though it carried more weight than any order. You don't fire at them. Ever. Sarah's jaw tightened, but she obeyed. The shape slowed. Then, impossibly, a sound vibrated through the hull, not through comms, not through air, but directly in the bones of everyone aboard. A voice, or the memory of one. You return. Marcus gasped, clutching his head. Did anyone else? Yes, Elias said. His voice was low, steady, but his hands were clenched white. Sarah's eyes narrowed. It spoke. Not words, Elias said. Impressions. Memory shaped into thought. The shadow drew nearer, filling the viewport. Its not eyes burned into the bridge, into them. Borrowers. Trespassers. Children of flame. The crew shuddered, sweat breaking on their skin, their breaths ragged. The sensation wasn't just hearing, it was remembering something they'd never lived. Wars before stars. Battles fought in silence when the galaxy was still molten. The shadow pulsed. You carry our roads. You carry our scars. And then it was gone. Not drifting away. Not fading. Simply no longer there. The bridge erupted into frantic voices. Sir, what the hell was that? Marcus shouted. Sarah's face was pale, her voice a hiss of restrained fury. You knew. You've been in contact before. Elias stood silent for a long moment. Then he turned, his gaze sweeping over his crew. That's what the Council must never know. This place isn't just a shortcut. It's a graveyard. A prison. We're walking roads built by something older than us. And those shadows? They remember the last time they were walked. Back in normal space, the alien observers continued their desperate transmissions. Their readings made no sense. Earth's flagship had vanished into void without leaving hyperspace traces. Panic spread through their ranks. Already the Seroth were demanding preemptive war. The Krathar threatened blockades. The Volari whispered of extermination before humanity became unstoppable. But their fear was only half the truth. Because Earth's vanishing fleets weren't just hiding. They were bargaining. Elias returned to his quarters later, the weight of silence heavy around him. Sarah followed, her eyes sharp. You're playing with fire, Elias, she said, her voice trembling with restrained anger. You think we can use this without consequence? You think those things are just going to let us walk their roads forever? Elias stared at the small viewport, the shadows of the phantom lane still etched into his memory. They let us because we give them what they want. Sarah froze. What are you talking about? His voice was soft, almost broken. Every fleet that vanished and never returned? They weren't lost. They were taken. Offered. Her face drained of color. You mean, we've been feeding them? He turned, his eyes hollow. We made a bargain. Power for sacrifice. And Earth intends to keep it. The ship trembled. Lights dimmed. From deep within the phantom lane, something vast stirred again. The shadows were not done watching. And this time, they were hungry. The tremors rattled through the Resolute's hull like the heartbeat of something vast and hungry. Warning lights flickered, systems surged and dipped as though reality itself was suffocating the ship. On the bridge, Colonel Sarah Hull braced herself against the console, her eyes burning with fury. You made a deal with that, she hissed at Commander Elias Ward. With shadows that think in wars older than time? How many fleets, how many lives have been thrown into their jaws just so Earth can terrify the Council? Elias's face was grim, lined by years of burden. Do you think Earth had a choice? We were cornered before we even reached the stars. Outnumbered. Outgunned. The Council was waiting for us to stumble, to fall in line or be erased. This was the only way we survived. Sarah's voice cracked with rage. Survived, or sold our souls? Before Elias could answer, the shadows moved. They came like a tide. Dozens, no, hundreds of shapes coalesced in the black beyond the viewport, circling, shifting, their outlines flickering between half-real geometries and beasts carved from nightmare. They pressed against perception, forcing minds to fill them with images, wings that stretched into infinity, mouths filled with devouring light, claws scraping along the edge of thought itself. The ship shook again. Systems dimmed to emergency glow. A single tone vibrated in the crew's bones. Hunger. Payment. Memory owed. The voice or memory was inside every head at once. Marcus Kane dropped to his knees, clutching his ears, though no sound had touched them. Other crew members gasped, staggered, some weeping under the crushing pressure of the shadow's presence. Sarah forced herself to stand tall. They want another fleet. Another offering. Elias's silence was answer enough. Meanwhile, light years away, chaos erupted in the Galactic Council chambers. Reports of Earth's demonstration spread like fire. The Resolute had vanished, its drive leaving no trace, no distortion. The Seraph ambassador slammed crystalline limbs against the floor, demanding an immediate coalition strike. The Krathar roared for embargo and extermination. The Volari spoke with trembling voices of humanity's unnatural path. They can appear anywhere, one delegate screamed. No defense will hold. Not if they walk through shadows themselves. Panic bled into every corner of the chamber. And in their fear, none of them realized the greater truth that humanity was not wielding a weapon. Humanity was feeding something far worse. On the Resolute, Sarah's fists clenched. We can't keep paying their price, she said. You know it. I know it. One day, they'll want more than fleets. They'll want us. Elias's jaw tightened. For years he had lived with the bargain, carried the weight of vanished ships. He remembered their names, their captains, the families left behind on Earth. All sacrificed to keep humanity alive. Do you think I don't know? He said, his voice raw. Every time I sign off a deployment, I wonder if I've damned them. But without this, Earth would already be ashes. Sarah stepped closer, her voice sharp as a blade. Then maybe it's time we stop playing their game. The ship shook again, harder. The view outside warped as the shadows pressed closer, their hunger undeniable. Ode. 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 The word rippled through the crew's minds like a drumbeat of inevitability. Lieutenant Marcus staggered to his feet, face pale, eyes wild. Sir, if we don't give them something, they'll take us. They'll take the Resolute. Elias's hand hovered over the console. A fleet command code glowed before him, a prepared sacrifice. He had only to confirm, and another Earth task force, waiting unknowingly in deep patrol, would vanish forever. His crew watched him. Some trembling. Some silent. Sarah's eyes burned into him, demanding defiance. "Don't you dare," she whispered. Elias closed his eyes. He heard the voices again, the shadows, the memory of war beyond creation. He heard the screams of those already offered. And he heard the future, Earth, triumphant but enslaved to hunger not its own. No more. His eyes snapped open. Weapons. Target the anomaly directly. The crew froze. Sarah's voice was sharp. "You said never fire at them." "I said never," Elias growled. "But never ends today." The Resolute roared to life. Cannons primed, missile bays opened, experimental railguns hummed with furious energy. The shadows swarmed closer, agitated, their whispers rising into a storm. "You break. You defy. You are ours. Fire everything!" Elias shouted. The void erupted in fury. Blazing light lanced into the phantom lane, tearing into shadows that weren't supposed to bleed. But they did. Their vast shapes convulsed, shrieking not in sound but in collapsing memory. The crew screamed as alien images seared their minds, battles of galaxies unborn, stars shattered like glass, empires crushed before Earth had even cooled. But the Resolute did not falter. Again! Elias roared. Missiles streaked, detonations ripping the void, light flooding the darkness. The shadows writhed, recoiling, folding inward as though retreating from something they had never imagined possible, defiance. And then, silence. The black expanse stilled. The watchers were gone. The bridge was quiet, broken only by the ragged breaths of the crew. Systems stabilized, lights brightened. For the first time, the phantom lane looked empty. Sarah stared at Elias. "You just picked a fight with gods." Elias's gaze was steady, his voice low. "No. I reminded them what humans do when cornered." In the council chambers, as Earth transmitted its final report, silence fell. The alien delegates leaned forward, awaiting some explanation, some reassurance. Instead, they received a simple message, delivered with calm finality by Earth's ambassador. "Our fleets do not vanish. They walk where others cannot. And what walks with them, now remembers us. You feared our armies. You should fear what we defy." The chamber broke into chaos, but the words lingered like a brand. Back aboard the Resolute, Sarah stood beside Elias as the ship prepared to step back into normal space. "What happens when they come back for us?" she asked softly. Elias looked into the empty dark, where shadows once circled. His voice carried the quiet certainty of a man who had seen too much, lost too much, yet refused to bow. "Then we show them," he said, "that even in their phantom lane, humanity doesn't vanish. We fight." The stars rippled back into view as the ship emerged, scarred but unbroken. Behind them, in the silence of the lane, the shadows stirred once more, not as masters, but as predators who had finally learned fear.